Look at those snow squalls.
One of the easiest things you can do is to make sure that you're registered to vote. The upcoming midterms are going to be so important. If we want to take back power, we have to be able to vote, and we are the ones that have that power.
Hello. Sorry I'm late. I had to stay for the reading of a will. Found out I received nothing. So I'm wearing this because there's a certain subset of person who follows this channel who gets pissed off when I wear a jacket inside. I always get those comments, what, you don't have any heat? What, are you too cheap? And then when spring and summer comes along, I wear a buff pretty much every day, and then that kind of infuriates. I think that same person gets infuriated by this buff, so I'm here to help, which is why I'm wearing this buff inside, but I will be departing later to go outside. It is a meeting-free Friday, which means I only have 2 meetings. That's corporate speak. That totally makes sense for anybody who works for a company or a corporation. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Meeting-free Fridays. I have two meetings. So, but hey, I'm not complaining. I don't mind meetings. I actually like meetings. I like the people I work with. I like the stuff we're talking about. And I'm here to sell you on Badger 50 sunscreen. Actually, no, this is not, I have no affiliation with Badger. This is my sunscreen of choice. It's mineral. And I did not put it on before this film because then I would look like death incarnate, because this is not the stuff that rubs in. This is the stuff that makes you the color of this cap right here, which is bright white. But it works. And I will be outside later, and it's going to be almost 80 degrees here in New Mexico right now, which is pretty fantastic. But before I get ahead of myself, I have one of those meetings in 29 minutes, so I kind of have to get to this. My intention with this overall film was to make this film without you ever seeing or hearing me. But I ran out of time, and now I'm just got to put the screws to it and get through it. I don't know if you can see that red, which this is going to be in black and white. So that right there is red, and that is red. Those are Canon printers, brand new Canon printers sent to my house. There's a big one, an all-in-one printer that has something like, it's called Megatank, 14,000 prints in a tank or something crazy. And then there's a small portable printer. Much more on this later, and much more on what this might become later. But works on paper are becoming, they've always been important to me. As you guys all know, I print everything I do, but they're becoming not only more important, but I kind of am adapting the print aspect, whether it's the journal or making prints or printing books or magazines or trade books or zines. It's gotten even worse. I'm now thinking about morphing some of the workshops that we're doing into being workshops about works on paper. And I think I'm actually quite excited about it. So anyway, stay tuned for the Canon printer, what I'm going to be doing with those things. You might find it interesting. But this film's about story. One of the questions that I get that always makes me pause is when someone says to me, how do you come up with your story ideas? I have trouble coming up with ideas. That always gives me pause, because of all the things I have trouble with in life, which is a long and distinguished list, coming up with story ideas has never been a problem. I mentioned this before. There are three. Count them. Three. My middle school gym teacher was missing a thumb, which kind of for a middle school gym teacher is kind of normal. I think 80% of middle school gym teachers are missing at least one digit. But he would get mad at us and he would say, give me five push-ups. So there's three things: reading, writing, music. Those are the well of where I come up with my ideas. I read every day. I write every day. Everybody knows that. And I listen to music, and ambient music, for whatever reason, deep, dark Danish dub. Ambient music does something to my brain that allows my brain to find that realm of story about how I find things. But I mentioned earlier in this film, or you read earlier in this film, my New Mexico project is officially dead. I worked on this for 10 years, and I came to the realization last week that I added another story to the bottom of the list, which I thought was a really cool story, and I was like, wow, this is going to be great. And then I went up the story list, and there's just countless stories. And the top one had been on the top for a long time, and I've never gotten remotely close to finishing it. And I finally just realized, with the life I'm living right now, primarily my work life, there really isn't any time available to go into the field for doing projects of depth. I just don't see that ever changing while I still have this position, and I love this position, so I'm hoping I have it forever. So I was like, okay, no big deal. It was 10 years of work. The project originated when I was a kid, and it died last week. But I got 10 years of working on it. I met a lot of cool people. I think I made some decent photographs. I had some great experiences and got to explore parts of the state that I'd never seen before. But I was like, okay, I need to move on. So I came up with a different plan, which I will get to later. It's a collaborative plan. I'm going to be collaborating with someone who lives overseas, and we're going to work together on this thing. You will get all the details at some point in time when I actually have a moment to make progress on this. It's kind of fun, kind of exciting. It's a bit of a throwback to when I first got into photography. So in some ways, I'm really excited about it. And I kind of dabbled with doing a test last week, and it was so much fun to be in the field doing what I was doing. So anyway, I'll get to that at some point. I thought, okay, well, how do I help you come up with story ideas? So I came up with a real story that I will then turn into a fictional story to help you understand how these stories come to be, and then how you go from being, let's say, a photojournalist or an editorial photographer to being a documentary photographer. So taking a single day assignment or a 2-day assignment, turning that into a 2-week, 2-month, 2-year project. So New Mexico had this thing called the Chili Line. It was a 3-foot single gauge rail line that ran for 125 miles from Antonito, southern Colorado to Santa Fe. In 1924, the state of New Mexico finished the road to Taos. And actually, no, they finished the road, might have been to Taos, but they finished the road to Los Alamos, which was up on the Pajarita Plateau, which is where eventually Los Alamos National Laboratories was built. That's where they built the atomic bomb. You guys probably have heard about that story. There was a little movie made about it a couple of years ago that got everyone all hot and bothered and riled up. But if you really want to know that story, the movie's fine. I didn't get all the way through it, but read American Prometheus about Oppenheimer. That'll give you a much better idea what that story was. So the single gauge rail line was really interesting because they put in a stop at Otowi Crossing, and that's O-T-O-W-I, Otowi Crossing. Otowi Crossing is where Edith Warner ended up living. And if you don't know Edith Warner, she's also known as the woman at Otowi Crossing. And she was an unbelievable woman, just a total badass. She would take you right now, headlock you, noogie you, uppercut you, knee to the forehead, and toss your body in the ditch for the vultures to pick clean. This woman was an ultimate badass. She influenced all of the scientists at the lab, including Oppenheimer, who apparently had a fondness for her chocolate cake. Anyway, look up, Frank Waters wrote a book called The Woman at Otowi Crossing. It's absolutely fantastic. It'll give you a history of Warner and who she was and what she did. She had visions of the bomb long before it was ever in development. So my mom had visions as well. My mom would have these visions while she was awake. And I always thought it was bullshit. And then later in life, I was like, oh man, these are not bullshit. Like, she's onto something here. She was touched, as they say, and not the bad touched, the good touched, if you know what I mean. Don't touch me. Touch any of my stuff, and I'll kill you. My name's Francis Sawyer. Friends call me Psycho. So, single gauge, 3-foot rail line. Breathe. I think I ate a bug inside. Okay, so that's a cool story. Retracing the route of the Chile line. That was on my list of things to do. And another thing that was on my list of things to do was to take the latitude and longitude of Los Alamos and trace those latitudes and longitudes to the state line in all 4 directions and trace the effect of the bomb on the people along that line. Could have been the landscape, could have been an environmental issue, could have been downwinders, could have been the people, all that stuff. That was another. Chile line was on my list. Latitude, longitude was on my list. I'll never get to it. But then I started thinking, okay, well, how does, and I found out about the Chile line by reading, by the way. That's how that story came to me. And then after learning about the Chile line, the latitude and longitude just came to me from thinking about what else would be interesting to cover. So I thought to myself, all right, how do I come up with a fictional story that will help you understand how this works? From this point forward, everything I'm saying is fiction, so don't go try to research this or think that you're going to go shoot this story unless by some weird frickin' chance it is real. I didn't do any research. I don't care. Let's say that the country of Vietnam also has a 3-foot narrow gauge rail line that runs from Hanoi to Ho Chi Minh City. And the government has decided, like the government in New Mexico did, there's not a whole lot of purpose left for a 3-gauge single gauge line, 3-foot single gauge line. So we're going to stop running it and we're going to replace it with a modern rail system, but we're going to run that train one last time. There, my friends, is your story. That is your nucleus of the story. That is your, what I would call an editorial assignment. You might be able to get an editorial outlet to say, yes, we'll send you to Vietnam, and you have 2 days. You're gonna get on that train and you're gonna ride from Hanoi to Ho Chi Minh City, and you're gonna cover that last running of the single gauge rail line. That's a good story. That's a good assignment. You might actually make a portfolio image. You could make a lifetime portfolio image from that. I don't know. That's pretty good. And if you can get it, most often nowadays I would assume they would hire a local photographer in Vietnam to do that project instead of parachuting somebody over from another country. But I don't know. I've been out of the editorial racket for a long time. And even before I quit photography, editorial was like a waste of money for me. It was financially, you were going backwards if you were shooting these assignments for the most part. You know, some of these big outlets that everybody wanted to work for were paying rates from the 1970s. I could do a private commission portrait and make 5, 6, 7 times the amount just in the fee to shoot the portrait. So I stopped editorial, but I know a lot of other people love it. And a lot of times photographers just used editorial as their tear sheets, as a portfolio to get commercial and advertising work. So whatever. So that's the nucleus. You're going to get your ass on that train. Somehow you're going to do that last run of the train. And there you go. And if that's all you were able to do and you walked away with that, great. That's a nice little thing to do. And it's a great experience. But the greedy photographer says, that's not enough for me, god damn it. I need more. So if you've got a couple of extra days, then you'd go to the beginning of that rail line in Hanoi, and you'd go to the ending point in Ho Chi Minh, and you would work your way around those two locations, finding what the residue of that train line meant to those two cities. That's plan B. That's stage 2, phase 2. Alpha, Bravo, Echo 2. That's where you're at next. But then if you're a total douche and you're super greedy and you're like, I don't want to be an editorial photographer, I want to be a documentary photographer. Well, this is where it gets interesting. Now, you go and you take that single day, that last run. You're on there. You're a superstar. They may even give you like a small crown and, I don't know, throw flowers at you as you come down the rail tracks. I don't know. You do that, and then you do the starting point and the ending point. That's phase 2, Alpha, Delta, Echo. Phase 3 is you go back and you take your time and you retrace the route of that exact route of that train, engaging with everyone and everything whose life was tied to the line. That is people who had a business that were associated. Those are people who were in charge of repairing the tracks or maintaining the tracks. How about the people who lost family members, I don't know, that got run over by the train? And don't laugh, I guarantee if there's a single age rail line, the Chile line probably ran over a couple of people. That's what happens. Trains, they're dangerous. They give you toy trains as a kid and they're trying to trick you into playing on the tracks. My grandmother always said, my grandmother was amazing. My mom's mom. She was amazing. She would get caught speeding doing like 100 miles an hour in her Gran Torino and she could talk her way out of it. And she was like, we'd be like, my house, we didn't have any sugar, right? We had no sugar in our house. So we'd go to grandma's house and grandma'd be like, we'd get in the Gran Torino and she'd be like, what do you want? And we want fireworks and sugar. And she'd be like, let's go, let's roll. She'd buy us mounds of sugar, tons of illegal fireworks. And then we, of course, would shoot those illegal fireworks at anything that came near us. People, cars, children, pets, trains. And it was always, don't ever go play on the train tracks. And the second we heard that, now I'm in elementary school. My brother is camping out in front of the local liquor store to get drunks to buy us cigarettes. And then I'm in like second grade, sucking on a Marlboro Red, lighting M80s to throw at the train as it comes by. So some might consider that a delinquent childhood. But when you're from rural Indiana, I was considered a Rhodes Scholar just by knowing how to smoke and light a firework at the same time. And you can tell all these years later how well I've adapted to high society. Where was I? I was talking about fireworks and trains and people getting run over. So anyway, my grandma said, don't play on the railroad tracks. That's all we did. We put all kinds of stuff on the railroad tracks to have the trains run over it. The people who would get run over by a train in Vietnam, who knows? But that could be an angle to that story. My point is that you're taking your unbelievable amount of time and you're going from the top to the bottom, every single person that you can engage. And what you just did was you transferred from becoming a photojournalist / editorial person to being a documentary photographer. And in the process, you hit the book home run as well, because that is how books come to be. Occasionally, an editorial assignment will turn into a book. For example, another book that you should definitely know about is Paul Fusco's book, RFK Funeral Train, which is also based on the running of a train. When RFK was killed, the train made a passage through America and people came out in mass to pay respects to RFK as the train went by. And you had every demographic. You had African Americans and you had wealthy white people and poor white people and Latinos, and every other demographic in the United States came out to pay tribute to the train as RFK went by. It's a book by Paul Fusco, the Magnum photographer. It's a great book. I have 2 copies of it. Simple. That's the nucleus. So occasionally an editorial assignment will turn into something like that. But most of the time it takes a little bit more than what the editorial board's going to give you, or an editorial assignment. Because even when I was working as a photographer, the days of going from the week-long 10-day assignment, those started to get cut down. 5 days, 3 days, 2 days, 1 day. Then you get like a couple of hours. And it was just trending in the wrong direction, which was another reason why I was like, I don't really think I can do the work I want to do as a working photographer. So anyway, that's it. And then you take your time and you walk out of there. You have a depth of photography. You have a depth of reportage, which is what you are after if you are a doc shooter or you are a bookmaker. The book is the ultimate laying bare of your soul as a photographer, because the second you begin to lay things out, it is immediately apparent how good you are and what you have and don't have. And some people take that defensively and they say, well, and they try to make excuses, and that's why we see so many bad photography books. But other people, the good photographers, take it as a challenge and say, wow, okay, number one, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. And number two, I need to go back and keep working. I need to work harder and come back and fill in these holes. So that's what the book does for a project like that, is to say, okay, what am I missing? Maybe when you get done, you did the last run editorial, you did the beginning and end of the run, then you trace the whole line, and you get back and you say, you know what? The thing I'm missing, I've got tons of portraits. I've got some great audio recordings of people. I've got more than enough images of the actual train itself. But what I don't have are sort of landscape imagery that shows the route of the train through the landscape. So you have to go back and you shoot specifically for that thing that you accidentally left out or couldn't get the first time. That's story. That's how stories come to be. Again, how you come to stories, I don't know. I don't know most of you. I know your non-name handles on YouTube, whatever that means. It's always amazing to me how many people don't use their name on YouTube or social media in general. It's always like Nikon ZF 1968 Z2512 Alpha Deco. That's a combination of Delta and Echo combined. Deco. That's my call sign for the special ops. Deco. My first name is Art Deco. Get it? Just gave you a joke. Okay. Uh-oh. Time for the call. That's all I got time for right now. Anyway, coming up with story ideas, I guess you could say it is a skill, but it's one that I've been doing since 1988. Actually longer than that. So it's gone back over 40 years of me scheming and trying to figure out ways of telling stories and what stories I want to tell. It takes practice and it takes thought. You are not going to find it on YouTube. You're not going to find your story idea on YouTube. And if you do, it's probably been done 1,000 times. You need to kind of just disconnect yourself a bit. Find something that you're passionate about, something that you love, something that you think about when you're going to sleep, and something you think about when you wake up in the morning. Reading is the most basic, beneficial thing you can do. And I know that scares some of you. You say it doesn't, but I know it does because I've seen it. Works on paper. Oh, Jesus. Have you seen this stuff? This photographer is amazing. Holy cow, that guy. He's the cat's ass, as my dad would say. I have a funny story about cat's ass. So I was assisting once for a photographer in Arizona, and he was a Mamiya RZ guy. No, RB. RBs, which are basically like a battleship on the top of a tripod. They're horrendous. They're way too big and heavy. Anyway, Mamiya 7 comes out, he buys 2. And I go from assisting for a guy who's using an RB battleship on a tripod to using Mamiya 7s. And I was like, oh, this is a piece of cake. And then the first day that I assisted for him, I dropped one of them out of the car onto the ground. Yes, the true story. Didn't break, worked. And those are finicky, fragile cameras. Let's face it. Those were not built for heavy, heavy, heavy usage. And for some unknown reason, this did not break, and we stayed friends, and I continued to assist for him. But we were pulling into a gas station in Phoenix, and we pulled in, and there was like a 1982 Camaro, white, lifted in the back with huge, huge slicks, and then little tiny skinny tires in the front, no hood. And he had like a blower sticking up out of the hood. And he got out, and we're talking Beavis and Butthead level of Whiskey Tango. I mean, this dude was rough. He had like a bleached blonde mullet, buzzed on the top, and he was such a sight to behold that this photographer and I stayed in the car just to watch him. And I was like, oh my God, that guy actually exists. And the photographer, because he was a lot smarter than me, he said a line that I'll never forget. He looked at that guy and he goes, and he goes, just know this. Some woman out there thinks that guy is the cat's ass. And I was like, it's true. It's really true. So there's hope for people like me. There's hope. I don't have a Camaro. I'm hoping to get one at some point, and I might put huge slicks on the van because I know it's really good for the van, and it's what people want to see when they see you driving around town. Anyway, that's it. I got to do a practice recording I got to practice because I got an interview. I got an interview next week in Albuquerque, and then I got to go to New York and I got to interview somebody else. So I got to practice. I can't be caught talking to you guys. Bye.